Go. Okay, here we go. This is our week 1 webinar for ADL636. I do independent studies periodically, I may add some things for both classes. So if there's something specific to an independent study, then I will make that clear, hopefully, in this recording. So just kind of listen for those things. I apologize ahead of time if there's any confusion on that. So let's go ahead and get started then. Our agenda is we're going to go over just some general class stuff, just things to expect. We'll kind of briefly go over the week 1 assignments, and then of course we will not be having any open questions here because this is not a live webinar, so we won't be having those questions. And then we can ignore this as this portion as well here because this is not a live webinar. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so first of all, general class things. Let's go ahead and look at these. Okay, so first off, if you are involved in an independent study, the weekly meetings may be a little bit different. I will put information on the class website to update you on those. So if not, then we do, if it's not an independent study, then we go ahead and have weekly meetings. Sometimes they're pre-recorded, sometimes they're live. Sometimes I will record the live weekly meetings and post them later. I'll just keep you up to date on how we're going to go ahead and do that. For the last week, oftentimes I like to do something a little bit different, maybe something on Twitter as a Twitter chat or something like that, maybe something using Instagram. We'll determine that as we get further into the class. But remember, for an independent study, it is different, so we'll be putting information on the class website about that. So just see that class website. And then also for rubrics, when you're going over assignments, just a general rule of thumb here is always, always, always check those rubrics because I don't want you to miss points because you just forgot to include something that was worth 10 points, 50 points, whatever it is. So just be sure to check those rubrics. Okay, let's see. When will grades be posted? We post grades the Tuesday or later after the class ends, so you can expect to see those grades there by that Tuesday or shortly thereafter. All grades are posted at the same time, so if we're waiting for one student, then everyone's kind of waiting for that one student. However, I do understand that sometimes life gets in the way of things like this, so if you do need a little bit of an extension on an assignment, then please feel free to contact me and let me know, and we can discuss that. Discussion boards, try to do these earlier in the week. They make a bit more sense if they are done earlier, and it makes it easier for people to respond to at least 2 other students. When it comes to independent studies, these are sometimes done a little bit differently. If I have a couple of independent studies going on at the same time for the same class, then I can have students, email back and forth or respond to one another somehow, so we can arrange that. Or I can go ahead and just respond to the questions, and we can talk back and forth, professor to student in that, and we can meet that requirement of responding to at least 2 other students that way. If you're in an independent study and you are able to respond to another student that is taking the class at the same time, then you'll just be required to respond to 1 other student instead of 2 at that point. And then if there are different parts to the question, if you can label the parts of your responses, that helps me to make sure I catch everything that I'm supposed to in the response and make sure that you get all the points that you're supposed to. So that's helpful. I do have a website that has some hopefully useful information on there. Sometimes samples of work and recorded webinars, things like that. You can find that by going to this URL right here. Okay, let me get rid of that, and then we will continue. Okay. Okay, so this week is going to be going over assessments, specifically formative versus summative assessments. Some things you might want to think about is, what do you see the differences between those two? There are some very specific differences between those two types of assessments. What's the purpose of each? How can you use each in your classroom? And you might want to be thinking about, what's really realistic in your classroom as well, because it's a lot different when you get in the classroom and you've got, 30 or more students, staring at you. And that may be just one of your classes that you are doing assessments with. So something to consider as well. You'll be going over a little bit of data in there. When you do an assessment, you'll obviously have some data. So what do you do with the data? How do you use that data? How does it affect your teaching? And what do your students do with it? Do they do anything with that data? So just a few things to think about as you're going over the readings for this week. There's quite a bit of reading in there. There's some great information in there that you'll definitely want to go through. Speaking of that, don't forget about those class readings. There's a ton of information in there, some stuff on infographics and assessment, and there's just a lot of stuff in there that you'll want to make sure you spend some time with because it's some good stuff. Week 1 assignments. Let's go ahead and dive in and talk about the assignments for this week. One of the first assignments is creating an infographic. So you're going to want to pick something to present. I did one recently that was going over some of the things that just helping a student survive my math class. Pointing out things like after you take a test, you are welcome to go find the right answers to any questions that you have missed on the test, and I will raise your grade a certain percentage based on, depending on how you do on that. And if you take a quiz, you can do the same thing, and I can raise your grade. And pointing out, what percentage of your total grade homework is. So you want to make sure that you do, the best you can on that somewhat controlled environment of homework, because it's not like a test where you just have a limited amount of time and whatnot. You have a little more control over your homework grade. So I just made an infographic on that. So you're going to probably want to go ahead and pick a topic. And then I would check out where it says on there, start here, 10 infographic templates. It's a PowerPoint presentation. And there's some templates in there that you can use to create your infographic. And then you're going to want to check out the rubric at the bottom. And that rubric is found by scrolling down to the assignment here. You can see this is where our assignment is. And if you go right down here, there's going to be a rubric right at the bottom, like I said. And when you click on that link, it's going to open up this rubric right here. Sorry, it's taking just a second there. Okay, there it is. So you'll want to check that out to make sure that everything is looking good. Okay, your next assignment is going to be a discussion board, and you're going to be answering the question, what is formative assessment? You're going to not want to forget to respond to at least 2 other students, and again, if you're an independent study, we'll figure that out. If there's another student taking the course at the same time, you can possibly go back and forth with that other student, or just go back and forth with me, one or the other. You're going to want to make sure you read through this. I'm going to go to it right here to see if we can help you out with that one, just give you a little bit of more detail on that. And for this one, you're going to want to go ahead and there's a couple of articles to read, and then you're going to want to answer this discussion board, after reading those articles, of course. You're going to want to make sure you read this section right here. See if I can highlight that for you. You're going to want to make sure you read this section right here because it does say specifically you're going over formative assessment, not summative assessment right there. Okay, so our week 1, we have a webinar reflection that is due as well. So a little bit different. Sorry, I had to get my thoughts together there, but a little bit different with this, depending on if you are in an independent study or not. So if you are in an independent study, then I will post directions on exactly how this is going to be done. Sometimes we'll just do a pre-recorded webinar, things like that, but there will be details in the class website. For both classes, you'll probably want to just go ahead and check the class website. Remember, though, on how the webinar is going to be, if it's going to be a live webinar or pre-recorded webinar or whatever it is. For the paper, for the reflection, remember it is not a formal paper. It's just a reflection of the webinar. It's only meant to be about 3 to 4 paragraphs at the most. You don't need to be citing, resources, things like that. There is a link to a Word document that goes over how to write a reflection like this, so you want to go ahead and check that out as well. Just a heads up about an assignment for week 3. You will be required to interview someone like at the district office or somebody like that. So let me see if I can go ahead and get that open there. I'll see if I can go to week 3 and give you a little bit of a preview of that. But you're going to be required to conduct an interview with someone, like I said, at the district office level or someone that you can interview. So you're going to want to start thinking about that one to prepare for that, because you don't want to, think, oh, who am I going to interview, day 1 of the 3rd week or whatnot. So there's information right here on it. You're going to be interviewing someone that deals with assessment, and then you're going to be asking them these questions right there. So just a heads up about that, because I don't want that to catch you off guard, so you'll have plenty of time to get that ready, because it could be something that quite possibly takes a little bit more time. Okay, let's see what else we have going on here. Okay. All right, that about covers it for this week. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. You have my contact information, hopefully. And that's about it. Have a great week. Thank you very much.